Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat, our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From Shade to City, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to a Mets Talk Live right here on channel and on X. How is everybody doing on this lovely All-Star Break Tuesday? We got Zach here, we got Chrissy and myself to talk a little bit about Mets baseball while we wait until the break is over and we get back to games. But there is a lot to talk about. But first, let's say what up to the boys. Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. All-Star game. We'll see if it starts on time. I'm hearing per usual that there's some storms in Atlanta, some rain, so maybe it gets delayed. But a lot to talk about. I mean, the All-Star festivities are great and all. We were going to see a couple of Mets hopefully get in the game. Hopefully all of them get in the game at some point. But really, I think that this month is really about starting the second half off strong and just preparing for the deadline, because this is a deadline where the New York Mets, as we have said time and time again, need to go all in and invest in this roster. They need to invest in this roster because right now this roster is off to a good start, a head start, especially with the record in the first half, but they need more pieces, and that's the bottom line. So we are going to try to figure out on this stream what pieces are the most necessary of a lot of options on the trade deadline market per the recent news and reports. So happy to be here. Shout out to everybody. Drop those comments and questions in the live chat.
Exactly. Zach, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Enjoying a couple days away from competitive baseball. You know, we have the exciting home run derby last night, which I'm sure we'll briefly touch upon, especially one player in particular, and then the All-Star game tonight, which is, it is what it is. It's probably the best of all the All-Star games you got in all 4 major sports. So it's always fun to at least tune in and kind of just kind of see what's going on and have some fun with it. And just ready to see what the Mets decide to do come July 31st, how they improve this roster, because in what is in a weird year, there's a lot of there's an opening. There's an opening for a lot of teams, especially a team like the Mets, to go and make a big push and get that big deadline piece and stand above the rest in the NL and really just the MLB as a whole. So these next couple series are going to be interesting to see how well the Mets perform and who they actually decide to add.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the Met fans need a mental health break for sure during the stretch, especially with that tough stretch that they had. It was almost a month stretch where they just couldn't get out of their own way. With all the injuries, with the rotation, the bullpen, it just was a revolving door of just, who's up next. And some guys we never heard of pitch for this team over the first 3 months of the season. And of course, the offense with runners in scoring position. I know we were all excited about seeing those numbers for the first half of the season, but let's hope the second half is much better. But yeah, it's funny. I know you're talking about Jazz Chisholm, Zach, that big old home run hitter right there. I mean,
oh God.
I mean, Jesus, Judge is sitting there like, come on, man, I can fall asleep and hit that ball over the wall. But yeah, the home run derby used to be so much better because, it's actually used to be real power hitters instead of, has-beens or guys that are not power hitters. But yeah, it's just look, the Mets needed a break. We all know that, especially with the bullpen. The bullpen's going to be extremely rested coming out of the break. To get that going on Friday. So, that's the only good thing out of it when it comes to it. But the talk of the town is, what are the Mets going to do at the trade deadline? Obviously, we're going to give our first half grades. We're going to talk about the biggest surprises and for this team, and even a disappointment at the moment in the first half. The latest trade rumors that have been going around, and if you guys can hold up on the questions until somewhat later in the show, so we can try to catch up to them, and we'll do a little quick Q&A time for everybody who's in the chat on all the channels, so we can get going and see what you guys are thinking when it comes to the Mets and what you think they should do going forward. So we're gonna get started with the Mets are obviously a half game out of first place, and it's been a back and forth for since the beginning of the year, basically, with the Phillies. It does seem like the Braves, and let's knock on wood here, that they're not, gonna make a run for it in the second half. The Marlins are playing so much better than everybody probably could imagine. But it's like a two-team race. We all think it's going to be a two-team race down the stretch. And we got to see how we're going to, find our way through the National League. And it's going to take a lot to get started. But, Chris, I'm going to start with you when it comes to first half grade. Because, there's, not too long ago, what was it, 15 days ago, we were coming out of a terrible month of June. And, this team is spiraling out of control. They kind of, righted the ship a little bit, got back where, in striking distance of first place. So, your thoughts on the Mets in the first half and what type of grade you would give them for the first half of the season?
I think 13 games over 500 and only sitting a half game out of the division lead is a huge win, especially given that 3-week stretch. I mean, we could have been in this all-star break right now talking with a different tone, being 5 or 6 games back of the division easily if the Phillies had taken care of business and really taken advantage of the Mets' struggles. And I think that is a win within itself. If that 3-week stretch was only a week and a half, we know slumps are going to happen. We just want to limit the extended slumps. We say that all the time, Rob. And I think that if they cut that streak, right, in half, I would have given them still an A. But all things considered, I still have to give them a B plus because you take a look at this injury riddled first half. I mean, it started from the bullpen. It made its way to the rotation. And the rotation started off this season injured. I mean, no Manaya, no Montas, right? It was a disaster. And we didn't know what we were going to get out of Griffin Canning. And honestly, spoiler alert, he was going to be my biggest surprise before he went down with the injury. So I have another big surprise that's maybe not so good for the New York Mets in the next topic. But I have to give him a B plus. I think all things considered, them finding a way to be in the position that they're at right now is a win. AJ Minter going down. That was supposed to be a high leverage bullpen guy. Brutal blow for this team, right? Daniel Nunez was supposed to be another high leverage bullpen guy. We saw only a glimpse of him before he went back down and now needs Tommy John surgery. Danny Young is mixed in there, right? Kodai Senga missing a chunk of this season. Sean Manaea only getting back recently to end the first half. The DH, right, for the New York Mets, Jesse Winker, not seeing him for so long. I mean, this team has dealt with so many injuries, and it started off kind of respectable, and this season started off really strong, and we were very pleasantly surprised. But Rob, you and I were kind of like, when was this team and when is this team going to hit a wall in the first half? Because this type of play, especially given the lack of offense consistently that the Mets were getting in the first half, the pitching, it falling all on the pitching and the bullpen really wasn't that sustainable. So all in all, being 13 games over 500, I think a B. I'm going to give him a B plus. I think if you grade this first half a B, it's fine. But given the injuries, anything less than a B, I think really is short selling them. So I'm giving him a B plus. I'm giving him a B plus.
All right, so that's a B plus for Chris there when it comes to his thoughts on the first half. And there is a lot of good signs and a lot of interesting, especially with the injuries. I think that's a pretty good grade when it comes to overall what they had to deal with 3.5 months of the season. And so we're gonna get to Zach now when it comes to the first half grade. So how do you feel, Zach, about the Mets and the grade you're going to give for the first half.
I feel good about the Mets because, I mean, Chris nailed it all in the head. I mean, I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but this team, before, I guess, the second week in June when the injuries started really piling up and catching up to them, this was an easy A+. They were cruising to what would be a few game NL East lead. I mean, assuming they played 500 ball from when they started that losing streak, I think they'd be like something like 6 or 7 games above 500, maybe even more. I didn't do the math, but just kind of based off where they're at now, what the Phillies have done since then, which they haven't done much. So you got to take it with a grain of salt because the injuries really piled up. You can't get too on them about that last month stretch. I mean, obviously the hitting woes are going to be a big talking point going into this trade deadline, and that's what kind of has been the biggest problem because I think even with the pitching, I mean, it was great until Senga and Canning went down, and Tyler McGill for that matter. You know, even before they went down, when Minter and Danny Young went down, it really didn't affect them too much because you saw guys like Edwin Diaz just become what he was back in 2022. So this is a team that, when healthy, is one of the best, if not the best team in the league, and not fully healthy, they're going to struggle, and they had the depth to kind of mitigate some of that damage, but the injuries just piled up way too quickly. There was no reprieve, and that's what really hurt them the most. So B+ is the right grade.
Yeah, so look, we got B pluses across the board at the moment, and I'm gonna break that up, of course, because why not? It's more fun. But yeah, so we got a B+ for Zach, B+ for Chris, and
Wait,
yeah,
can I add, Rob? Can I
Yeah,
can I
go.
add real quick just to go on to why I gave him a B+? As I just mentioned in the chat on my live chat poll right now, the Mets have the second best record, believe it or not, against teams that are currently over 500. They are 25-19. They only trail the Houston Astros in that department.
Yes.
So I look at that and I'm like, they're not only winning and they're 13 games over 500, they are beating some quality teams at that. So I think that's very impressive, and that's what also contributed to my grade. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine. It's absolutely. I was gonna actually bring that up during the discussion because the Phillies are under 500, teams over 500. So that's a good sign, right? They're 6 games over 500 against teams over 500. But the issue that we've seen all year is playing away, right? They're 6 games under 500 on the road, and obviously they're dominant at home, which has been huge for them this year. But you know what? When you guys both giving B+, I'm not going to go much further down. I'm giving them a B, only because I'm still very disappointed that I know the injuries played a role, but the rotation kind of just like fell off the face of the earth, like in the snap of a finger. And I know the injuries were a big problem with that, but you know what? There was a couple of guys that were still pitching that started to pitch not as good when they were the best rotation in baseball, and they started to get hurt. And some of this didn't pitch well when they were still on the mound. And I didn't think they were gonna drop off the map within like 2 weeks of them being one of the dominant rotations in baseball. And I give them all the credit in the world because there was no way in hell that I believe that this rotation was going to carry this team for 2 months, especially early in the season. And I do wonder, I was shocked that it just, stopped out of nowhere, and it started with the injuries and just not pitching well. And, now we got the reinforcements. I feel like that the B is a good letter grade to give, only because that I think the pitching kind of just completely got wiped out, like out of nowhere. And it kind of spiraled this team out of control for a month. And the offense, right? The offense should deserve an F grade, to be quite honest with you, because they've played absolutely terrible. Runners in scoring position are still a major issue. Pete Alonso's still the only one that still has very good numbers, and even he started to, get those numbers lowered a little bit over the last month or so. And it's just the entire team where, this team ain't going nowhere. I don't care what trade you make. Bullpen, rotation, bat, both, all three. Like you need, basically a whole new offense to figure out this runners and scoring position thing if they don't figure it out, because they're not going to win. And I think that's been a big reason why they're 6 games under 500 on the road. they always seem to come back in the 8th or 9th inning when they'll have 1 run, no runs, 2 hits, and they'll find a way to tie a ball game, which is always fun, right? We saw it in Kansas City the last game before the All-Star break. They've had a lot of those. And a lot of them they actually came back and won, but it's in June, it felt like it was what happened on Sunday, where they would come back and then you get your heart broken, in the next half inning. But I'm gonna give them a B. They've played probably as good as they possibly can with all the injuries. They didn't have their quote unquote ace in Sean Manaea the whole season, so that's got to give them. You got to give them a lot of credit for that. And Kodai Senga did get hurt. Griffin Cannon, who was really damn good for us, got hurt. And now we're coming out of the break, fully healthy with a rotation. We still don't have a DH because who the hell knows? Winker with the back, Marte with I don't know what he was trying to do with his knee, checking his swing, and his knee basically fell apart. But what are the Mets going to do at this deadline when it comes to it? But overall, a B is my grade, which again, I think we all are on the same page here where the B is kind of where we are. I don't think anybody, I mean, if I'm wrong, I didn't see anybody in the chat putting their grades, but I don't think anybody is going to give this team an A or A minus. I think a B, B plus is right where it should be, to be quite honest with you, because they probably shocked more people, including all of us, with all the injuries, how good they were. And the offense still hasn't really taken over, a month of a season, which would be nice at some point. If it wasn't for the pitch, and who knows where this team would be, we might be talking about being sellers at the deadline if the pitching wasn't as good as it was the first 2 months of the season. Because I mean, even when the starting pitching started to waver a little bit, the bullpen was still just as good until they started to be bad, and then the offense didn't come alive until ever. So we just hoping that we can continue the good graces of getting this offense going, and then we'll really see how this team plays when the offense. I see a couple of B minuses, B pluses.
Yeah, Ray's giving a B minus. See Dola with a B minus.
That's
Funny
fair.
enough.
That's fair.
Funny enough, even with how the Mets have been over the past month, pitching wise, with the constant bullpen games and some starters kind of falling short of what you'd want them to do, they still are top. They're still the 4th best ERA in all of baseball. So this just shows how good they can actually be when firing on all cylinders, at least the rotation and the bullpen, because they have some phenomenal arms there. It's just the consistency and just I guess I don't want to get on Mendy. This isn't really about him, but the mismanagement of the bullpen and his starting staff. So I think that's something that he needs to just kind of figure out and grow a little bit with, because I think before the losing streak started, we were talking about Mendy making these bold moves and then paying off, and then he's kind of going back to the bold moves when they were in a losing streak, and they weren't paying off. They were hurting us in some games. So the starting rotation bullpen are still going to be a huge strength for the Mets team now that they're fully healthy, and you hope that the starters can start to get deeper, especially with guys like Sean Manaea and Senga getting back, especially Sean Manaea after what he showed in Kansas City. Being able to keep that bullpen fresh and not have to dip into it as early and often.
I think to round out this topic as well, to add on to that, given our grades and everybody in the chat's grades, I think it's also very fair as a Mets fan to look at this first half and say, there's a lot of room for improvement, right? No matter what happens to the deadline, I'm talking about just overall play from this team. There's a lot of room for improvement, and that we hold this team to a higher expectation. That's why we are giving them B minuses, Bs, and in the case of myself, a B plus. But I would like to give a second half grade of an A plus. And I think that really the catalyst of that is going to be the offense, like you said, Rob, taking off. So really fair assessments. Yes, we're probably happy given the brutal 3-week stretch, given some of Mendoza's decisions, given the lack of offense, that we are still 13 games over 500. Like I said, it could be a lot worse, especially in the standings, but there is still some things left to be desired with this team. And I think that is completely fair as a Mets fan to think right now.
Yeah, and when it comes to Mendoza, I know some people in the chat right now are talking about he mismanaged the bullpen. That is absolutely true, but I'm not blaming him for the first 2 months of the season because they did not go deep into games, and he got guys out because again nobody knew about Clay Holmes. You see him already struggling to get through 100 innings already. Kodai Senga, they have kid gloves on. They don't know what they were going to get from Griffin Cannon, so they were taking these guys out very early in the season, where I think they could have kept them in at times. And regardless of them, protected it. Clay Holmes and Kodai Senga, at least Clay Holmes in his stats, but you could see he already looks tired. Like he looks gassed in a lot of his starts now. And that's something that I don't think Mendoza really had any control over because when you got reclamation projects, when you got guys that haven't started in years and guys you got to protect in this rotation. I mean, I don't think Mendoza had the choice the first 2 months of the season. I didn't like the fact that they were taking him out early in late June and even July. It's like, all right, come on, like you got to let these guys go a little bit here, and that's where I think Mendoza kind of mismanaged in the last month and a half, where he could have left in starters a little bit longer just to get a little bit more. And again, if the starters give it up, the starters give it up. I think that you have to protect your bullpen as a manager at some point. You can't just keep on throwing these bullpen guys out there, 4 or 5 guys every single day and expect them to be at the top of their game all year. It just doesn't happen. And that was always my biggest concern with this rotation. And, with the guys getting healthy again, let's hope that, they're willing to go more innings because that's the only way your bullpen is going to get better. I don't care what you do at the deadline. If you're going to overuse these guys, they're not going to be good at all. And that's up to the starters to go a little bit deeper into games. And I'm not talking about 8 innings. Give me 6 innings, 6 or more. That's what I want. But 6 should be like the threshold coming out of the break. Like there should be no reason why these guys can't go into the 6th inning. With Kodai Senga going, every 6th day, that guy should be on the mound throwing 100 plus pitches every single time. Unless he's really struggling, he should be on the mound. Same thing goes for everybody else in this rotation. They're all warmed up. I think Mania is still kind of, on his way, but I don't think you have to start worrying about pitch count to the point where you got to take this guy out at 85 pitches, 80 pitches. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see with Mendoza, how he manages taking these rotation guys out going into the second half. So the next topic, which I was kind of like going back and forth on what topic to do for number 2. I thought the biggest surprise, and if you want to bring up a disappointment this season too, you can if you want. Zach, we're going to start with you. Biggest surprise so far in the first half.
Oh, that's tough. There's a lot of big surprises, and I'm gonna go off the beaten path here, and it's gonna be an interesting one. I don't think anyone's gonna think of this, but Frankie Montas. I mean, his rehab assignment was terrible. We never want to put too much weight on rehab assignments, and it proves 100% with him because he was bad. He was really bad. There was talk of should the Mets even bring him up to be in this rotation, even with the need for arms, but outside of the one bad start, I can't remember. It was in Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh. He has been solid for the Mets. He had a good first start. I think it was against the Phillies, if I'm not mistaken. Atlanta. Okay, yeah, it was Atlanta, and then a nice start in the Subway Series, and that start against Kansas City in Game 2 was another really good start for him. And we're not expecting ace-like stuff from him. We're not even expecting middle of the rotation stuff. But if he can hold down the bottom of the rotation, put up, get out there for a consistent 5 innings, even pushing to the 6th, maybe 7th every blue moon, that's going to be big for this rotation because what we were getting at the beginning of the season, Clay Holmes, Griffin Canning, those were our bottom guys, and Tyler McGill. They were struggling to get out of the 5th inning or even through a 6th inning, let alone consistently getting there. So to be able to get that at the bottom of the rotation with the question mark of Clay Holmes, not knowing what they're going to do with the pitching staff, whether they're going to add bullpen starters, both, whatever it may be, having kind of a stabilizer down there at the bottom of the rotation is going to be really big for them because we don't know what Mania is going to be able to give us for a couple weeks. He's probably not going to be able to go for his full workload. Senga, I mean, he needs the extra day. He finds trouble getting through that 6th inning, and God forbid he ever touches the 7th. So we need that. The Mets need that more than ever. And if Montas can continue what he did in those 4 or 5 starts here at the Bigs before this break, that would be huge for them.
Yeah, That's an interesting one, Frankie Montas. I didn't think that was going to come out of your mouth, but
I don't
it
think
is.
anyone.
Hey, listen, you know what? He's a big part of this rotation going forward because if he can pitch like he did, like you said, in his first, in his first 2 out of 3 starts, it's a good sign for the Mets going forward. So Frankie Montas was that. Chris, who was your surprise for the first half?
Mets fans. That's my surprise, is Mets fans. Like, how could remember when we were having discussions early on in the season when Juan Soto just looked like a shell of himself and people actually thought he wasn't going to snap out of it? And we were all trying to just tell everybody, like, just relax. He's gonna come into form, especially you and I, Zach, when we were talking about,
Yeah.
that very topic. I was just like, Mets fans are really doubting Juan Soto. If he is doing this come mid-June, then I'm gonna be worried. And he was the NL Player of the Month in June, and he had a career month in the month of June. I think it's his second best June of his career thus far, which is crazy that he even had a better one than that at some point in his career, given how young he is. But I would say that is my surprise, but I would say realistically, my disappointment, because disappointments are on the table, according to Rob here as well, is this Mets offense. There's no way around it. This offense was supposed to be the heart and soul of this team. This was supposed to be what carried this team, and it has ended up being the starting pitching and the bullpen collectively carrying this offense. And it's not been a first second month kind of thing. It's been the whole first half that this offense has just lacked consistency, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect this to transfer into 3.5 months of the season. I didn't. I believed in this offense from the start. Yes, we all knew that this offense was a little bit top heavy going into the season, given the personnel and just the names on the roster on paper, but I didn't expect this. I did not expect this. And that is my biggest disappointment. A team that was supposed to be led by their offense, where we're talking about in the offseason after Juan Soto, after going back and re-signing Pete Alonso, potentially being a top 3 offense in baseball, and they haven't been that. I don't even think they've been a top 5 offense in baseball. And the runners in scoring position metrics have been brutal outside of a couple of guys, especially named Pete Alonso. So Steve Cohen, I know he put out a tweet like a month ago saying the runners in scoring position metrics, and this is not sustainable. They're gonna it's gonna sort itself out. It hasn't sorted itself out yet. And so, therefore, when we transition into the next topic about trade rumors, the Mets have to be aggressive, because I think it would be a mistake to not pursue a big bat, whatever big bat presents itself in this trade market, because right now, nobody internally is going to get the job done. And if they want to go ahead and take the conscious risk of relying on Vientos, who's looked better as of recently, to just completely turn it around 180 in the second half and continue getting the production that we've gotten for the past maybe 2 weeks out of Beatty and Mauricio consistently in the second half, we all know this. The bottom half of this lineup has looked brutal for the most part of this season. And the guys at the top, they've been inconsistent. Nobody has really gelled together. So that's a big risk to take. That's my biggest surprise so far, is how bad this offense has really been, and how the lack of consistency surrounding this offense.
Yeah, so you got Met fans as the biggest surprise for Chris, and disappointment in the offense. Absolutely, I think we all agree with that. And Zach said Frankie Montas, so that's interesting. I'm gonna go somewhere where most Mets fans did not want to see this guy on the team, and that is good old temper tantrum Jeff McNeil.
I knew it.
Jeff McNeil is the biggest surprise for me, is the fact that he just came back from injury, knowing that Beatty and Acuna are the darlings of this Mets organization, and the way they were, treating these guys. And, Beatty earned it in spring training, but haven't really earned it at that time. Got sent back down. Acuna had the second base job. He couldn't hold on to it. Jeff McNeil says, F you all. I'm going to take this job. And not only did Jeff McNeil take the job at second base, he says, I'm going to play center field and show you assholes how good I can be and be utility guy all around. And Mr. Jeff McNeil has been probably the most consistent player other than Pete Alonso on this team since he's come back. He's the guy that he's had clutch hits, had clutch home runs. This made outstanding catches in a position he never played before, and just has been, I would say, more than serviceable in center field when he got the opportunity to play there. Obviously, he's a good defender in second. He's a guy that is the jack of all trade, right? He's figured out that he's not going to be this 330, 340 hitter anymore. He's going to, jump on balls when they're middle in. And, yeah, he's a 260 hitter now, but he just seems like a better overall hitter, where when he really didn't get power from Jeff McNeil in his best years average-wise, he's starting to show that he can hit for a little bit of power along with getting, being a 260 hitter, which, I think a lot of us would probably like him to be the 330, 340, especially a team that's terrible runners in scoring position. That would be nice. But I think Jeff McNeil has been the biggest surprise. Like, even I was a supporter of Jeff McNeil. I didn't think he was going to do this. Like, there's no way I could have thought of this. Because I always like the proven players. We can talk about prospects to the cows come home, and we'll definitely get into that in the next topic. But Jeff McNeil is the biggest surprise for me. The biggest disappointment, Mark Vientos. I think Mark Vientos has been a huge disappointment, and is, I think, a big reason why this offense has been one of the worst in baseball runners in scoring position, because you're reliant on 4 guys in this lineup, and I know they should be better, and that's a whole nother story. Besides Pete Alonso, Lindor hasn't been that good. Soto has been terrible. Nimmo has been okay, but he hasn't been as good. Pete Alonso has been carrying the torch with that, but overall they have not been good. But you also need guys like Vientos, who was supposed to be a big proponent of this lineup, along with Alvarez. How we were talking about how deep this lineup can be, that we can have 5 guys that can hit 25 plus home runs, maybe even 6 guys that hit 25 plus home runs. And now we're talking about 4 guys only instead of 6. I mean, maybe the second half will be different and they take off, but we just never know. But Vientos, and I want to throw Alvarez in there too, because again, Alvarez is in the minors, and Vientos basically lost his job, so to speak. I think Vientos is going to end up being the everyday DH because of what Beatty has done, because I think Beatty has been better. Even though Vientos over the last couple of games looked a little bit better with the bat. But so McNeil, biggest surprise and biggest disappointment is Mark Vientos. And for a little bit of a caveat, Alvarez as well. Get Chris.
Jeff McNeil, I mean, you're spot on. If I could just echo exactly what you said about Jeff McNeil, I will go on record, wrong about Jeff McNeil. I was wrong about Jeff McNeil. And honestly, the way that he has come back into this lineup has been awesome to see. I know he's only hitting 253. Long gone are the days where he's going to hit 300 plus. He's not that type of hitter anymore. But the OPS is officially over 800 at 805. Thank you. That is the barometer of where we need these Mets guys to be at. Lindor's not even at 800 plus right now. I think he's just under 800. So to see Jeff McNeil have 9 home runs, and we're talking about a season where he could eclipse 15 home runs, which is a huge win within itself for Jeff McNeil, being a gap-to-gap hitter. And like you said, providing that versatility as well. And I think that, I forgot who's saying in the chat here. Let me go ahead and quickly scroll up. I also think that not that much of a surprise. It was Truman who's saying this. Not that much of a surprise, but for me, just a pleasure to see Pete Alonso be the hitter that we all know that he can be. So I want to clap it up for both Jeff McNeil and Pete Alonso, 2 bright spots in this offense for sure in the first half, along with Juan Soto.
Yeah, McNeil has been awesome. And I said this at the beginning of the year. I don't know if it was on stream with you, Chris, or in the comments or something. But I was saying that this team, they're not going to succeed with Acuna at second base or Jose Iglesias. Yeah, this was even before he was signed by the Padres. It was going to probably be Jeff McNeil coming up and hitting closer to what he was in 2022 or the back half of last year. And he's done that. Not with the average, but with the ability to get the ball over the fence with a little bit more consistency and driving the ball into the gaps or down the line and being able to drive runs, especially at the bottom of the order. I know he's played a lot in the 5-hole, and that's something the Mets are going to need to work on in the second half. And that's actually kind of one of my biggest disappointments of the season has been their line construction. But that they need him at the bottom of the order to either turn the lineup over or be a run producer and a just an extra base machine down there at the bottom of the order, something the Mets haven't been able to get. And that comes with just the poor lineup construction and just the roster, how it was assembled. They've relied so much on these young kids making such a big impact that we haven't had consistent bats to be able to at least produce somewhat and take some of the load off of the backs of the guys at the top of the order who have either not been getting it done or just aren't even being put in positions to because of the streakiness of what they've been. And then when it gets to the bottom of the order, there's nothing there for them to do because they've been awful. Or it's just it just comes with how this team has been built. And, a lot of people have kind of fallen off this year, sophomore slumps, or not developed as much as you'd like. And that's what they're going to need to improve come the second half of the season is figuring out ways to piece together that bottom of the order or live and die by these young kids.
They're definitely trying to do that for sure. And you know what? I think the biggest thing here is that they actually sent Alvarez down, and I don't think a lot of us thought they would. And when they did, and they also gained another year service time and control, by the way, because they kept him down longer, which I'm so shocked about. I'm surprised the players union didn't get involved in that. But again, the Mets have the right to do that. And he wasn't playing well anyway, so it's not like he was playing great, and the Mets wanted to get another year of control. But hopefully Alvarez, what we've seen in AAA, which again, Beatty looks like Barry Bonds at AAA, and Alvarez looking like Barry Bonds in AAA. I think when it comes to Alvarez at the plate, before we get to the next topic, I think it's all about confidence with him. I don't think it's talent. Like we seen the talent from Alvarez a couple of years ago. Like it's there, but we're not asking for much. We're asking for him to be a better catcher, be better behind the plate blocking balls, and hitting home runs. That is all he has to do. Nobody's expecting him to bat 270 here. You can bat 230, but give me 25 home runs. Like that has been the power from Vientos and Alvarez has been a huge factor. The lack of power from those two guys have been a huge factor of why this offense has been down the drain. And, that's why I can't wait for the second half, because if we get bounce back performances from both of those guys in Vientos and Alvarez, the trade deadline could look a lot different because we are 2 weeks away from that. And our favorite time of the year, unless you're sellers, is the trade deadline. Last year, we had an opportunity because we were running around trying to reach our way back into a postseason spot last year, and nobody knew what Stearns was going to do last year because we were kind of in that middle ground where you could be sellers, you could be buyers, but the Mets were red hot. And now we are definitely buyers, and we can actually have a smile on our face because we will be buying. It's just, there's a little bit of nervous behind that smile because we really don't know what David Stearns is going to do. Is he going to be the prospect hugger that I think he might be, which will probably piss me off throughout the next couple of weeks? Or will he actually be aggressive, be very active, and make this team even better than what they already are? They're a top 5 team in baseball. So you can argue top 3 in regards to just their record in general, but they're definitely a top 5 team in baseball. You can't let other teams like the Cubs, like the Phillies, like, teams internationally, the Dodgers, get better at the trade deadline where they're constantly trading prospects, constantly bringing in better players, making themselves better in the final couple of months of the year. And then when you face those guys, here comes, Darren Ruff for the New York Mets and, and Vogelback. And that's what we get. And then you see everybody else, get better, even better players when you were getting the, the C grade guys and everybody else getting the A and B guys. That can't happen this year. I don't care what anybody says. If you want to talk about Pete Crow Armstrong, Frank, one more time, go ahead. It's not going to work in his chat. I'm telling you right now, Pete Crow Armstrong, before we get into all of our discussion when it comes to the trades, Pete Crow Armstrong trade was stupid. I'll be the first to admit that, only because the Mets weren't a very good team that year. That's the only reason why. If that was the missing piece, where Javi Baez was the bat that the Mets needed, that was the only thing they needed, then I can see PCA being the one trading and getting kind of robbed of a trade like that. But if that was the missing piece for the New York Mets, nobody would have complained about it. But the Mets needed like 14 different moves to make that team good. They were a 500 team. This is different. This is one of the best teams in baseball. I'm not saying give up 9 out of your 10 top prospects. Nobody's saying that. But you got the farm system to where it's at, where you have guys that are expendable. And that is Stearns' job, to pick and pinpoint which guys he thinks are going to be difference makers for this team in the present and the future, and others need to be used as assets, right? How many more shortstops and third basemen and second basemen we're going to have on this team that they can't even play right now on this roster, let alone in another year when Jet Williams is around and other guys is around. Like, we have too many guys in the same position. Use them as assets. Chris, I'm going to start with you with, I know you did a video, so that's why I want you to go first, just to talk about what you did videos on. The latest Mets trade rumors. Obviously, John Heyman talked about it. We've been hearing a couple of rumors from other reporters. So go ahead with that, and what else you think the Mets might actually do in your own mind in regards to trades.
Yeah, I've released a bunch of videos already talking about trade targets for the starting pitching market, bullpen, and also, I guess, now the center field market as well. And I think that where I want to start off with, and by the way, I completely agree with you. We're not saying to sell the farm by any stretch of the imagination, but that 2021 roster was not objectively the roster to go all in with a move like PCA for Javier Baez and Trevor Williams. It just simply wasn't the right thing to do. And we know why it wasn't now. So, but this is the roster to go all in with. Like, you invested how much money between Pete Alonso and Juan Soto alone this offseason, right? Like, and this is the reason we had to sit here through the trade deadline, and it wasn't fun, but we did it, Rob, back in 2023 when Mr. Billy Epler was selling off all the pieces, which was the right thing to do. It wasn't to go ahead and have these guys just sit around in the farm system for years and years and years until 2028, 2029, right? With the logjam at the current major league level for the New York Mets roster wise. It was to be a championship caliber team and use those pieces, whether it was in off-season trades or mid-season trades, to make a World Series run, when eventually the Mets were going to be contenders and they were, quote unquote, going for it, which we heard from Max Scherzer wasn't necessary last year. Even though they overachieved, it was supposed to be this year in 2025. So now is the time to do it. I think above all else, where we should start this discussion is what's going to happen in center field and if the Mets are truly going to be after a center fielder or not. Because as we're talking about in the chat, Byron Buxton, who was a guy that I know that you've been reluctant on, Rob, and a lot of people are reluctant on him, especially given the injury history. He's an incredible talent. I don't think anybody is going to refute that. But he has come out today and directly was asked about the trade rumors. And he basically said, he didn't basically say, he said he's not going anywhere. He's got a no trade clause and he wants to be a Minnesota Twin for life. Why? I've got no idea, because that organization is in shambles, but that's his right. And if he wants to be loyal to that organization, so be it. He deserves that. Great player. Wish him all the best. Probably won't be winning anything right there anytime soon, but that's the situation with Byron Buxton. But the rest of the center field market is such just an anomaly of figuring out, what makes this team better versus maybe prioritizing McNeil a little bit more in center field in the second half and just rolling with that to just create more offense. Because you're taking a look at Heyman. I made a video about it. Heyman stated that the Mets and 8 other teams are interested in Luis Robert Jr. Even still, the guy's batting 190, right? He's got an OPS that's under 600. Terrible. And he's also injury prone. Even though he plays a good center field, how often are we going to see him on the field? And I think the only saving grace of acquiring a guy like Luis Robert Jr. is to be a platoon player. And I don't like platoon players, right? I don't think, Rob, you like platoon players. How many times have we talked about it? He mashes lefties. He's a lot more respectable against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching, but that's not enough. That's not enough to make him an attractive trade target for me for the Mets this deadline. Cedric Mullins. A lot of people are talking about Cedric Mullins. Yeah, he's got home run potential. He's hitting 13 home runs in the first half. He's going to be well on his way to 20 plus home runs this season, but he's batting 218 with an OPS just over 700. Does he really make this team that much better? Instead of just rolling with a guy like Jeff McNeil and prioritizing maybe an addition in the infield and maybe taking a home run swing at a guy like Eugenio Suarez, who a lot of teams are going to be after. But the biggest question is surrounding, for me, the hottest team in baseball right now, and that is the Boston Red Sox and what they're going to do, primarily surrounding Jarren Duran. Now, for me, if I had to guess, just based off of where they're at right now and how just much they've been surging over the past couple of weeks, I think they've got like, what, a 7-8 game win streak. Again, hottest team in baseball. Are they going to let go of Jarren Duran? They've got 6 outfielders on that roster. 6 outfielders, right? Roman Anthony. I forgot exactly. I think Ref Snyder's on that team. Anyways, look at their roster. We can name them all if we really want to. I don't know all their names again, but that is going to be the biggest question mark. Are the Red Sox, given their position right now, creeping up on the AL East and holding a wild card spot in the American League? Are they going to let Jarren Duran go? Because for me, in center field, that's really, if Buxton is off the table, that's really the only game changer that I could see the Mets going after. I released a video today talking about Harrison Bader. Harrison Bader's having a really good first half to his standards, but are we fooled with those numbers from Harrison Bader? He was off to a really good start in the first half for the Mets last season before he fizzled out and Tyrone Taylor won the job over him. Could the same thing happen this season if you were to go acquire Harrison Bader? And I think the Minnesota Twins are just a crapshoot, just trying to figure out what they're going to do at the deadline, because I don't even think they know if they want to be buyers or sellers, because they're within striking distance in a wild card spot, but they're also in an AL Central division that is dominated by the Tigers and probably will be for the next couple years in the foreseeable future. So I don't really know exactly what's going to happen in center field. A lot more options to talk about bullpen wise and starting pitching wise. I've released a lot of videos talking about the bullpen. Felix Bautista of the Orioles in their lost season. Former Met Dennis Santana. You got David Bednar as well that could be available in the Pittsburgh Pirates organization, who's having a really bounce back season. Kyle Finnegan of the Washington Nationals. We saw an in-division trade between the Mets and the Nationals last season for Jesse Winker. So clearly, cleaning house with Mike Rizzo and firing him in the front office, they are probably going to be going into a little bit of a seller's mode as well, as they are at the bottom of this division right now in the NL East. So a lot more arms to be had. But for me, I'm curious to get your guys' opinions on the center field market. And if Jarren Duran is off the table, if the Red Sox come out and say, we are not going to get rid of Jarren Duran, because for me, I look at Jarren Duran, I'm like, they don't need to trade him this season. They can wait until the offseason. He's a controllable young player, entering the prime of his career. They're not losing any value if they decide to hold on to him rather than trading him. So that's why I'm like, I don't think that they're going to be enticed to let go of Jarren Duran. But if they come out and the Mets and David Stearns get wind of them being open to moving him this trade deadline, of course, that's the 1A target with Byron Buxton not being available. So that's where I'd like to start. But I think the overarching question that all Mets fans are trying to figure out, and I know you love this word, Rob, and that's why I'm curious to hear your thoughts and opinions about it. Untouchable. Who in this organization is untouchable versus not? Because you said David Stearns, this is his job to figure out a lot of talent in this, in this farm system, especially on the pitching side. We know about, I guess you can call them the three-headed monster between Sproat, McLean, and Jonah Tong, right? Carson Bench is probably the best hitter in this farm system, as right now as well, rising through the ranks. Who's untouchable versus who isn't? Because if you're asking me, I'd probably say those 3 pitchers are untouchable. You could probably extend it to Carson Bench. Everybody that has touched a major league diamond for this Mets team, right, that is young. I'm talking Vientos, Mauricio, Beatty, Luis Angel Acuna. You're not going to trade Francisco Alvarez. I don't think that's even part of the equation. But everybody that is young that's touched this field for the Mets in the first half is on the table. I will say that. Curious to get your guys' thoughts and opinions on that.
Yeah, Zach, I'm going to let you just go right after. I just wanted to say one thing about the whole untouchable thing. The draft should tell you exactly who is untouchable because of in our farm system, because we had 17 picks overall I think at the moment when I looked at it, and they drafted 14 pitchers. So that just shows you what they're doing. So that kind of made me a little disappointed because I feel like they're not going to trade any of these pitchers, and I think it's going to be very hard to get top talent in here if you're not going to trade pitching prospects, because all teams want that in a trade. So what are you going to do? Are you willing to give up the position players? That's going to be the problem, because now if you're not going to add a pitching prospect in any of these packages for whoever you want to talk about, you're going to have to add more position players, because a pitching prospect is probably one pitching prospect is probably like two position players in your farm system. That's how valuable they are. And that's my biggest concern when it comes to Stearns not willing to do any of that. And again, when you don't spend money on a rotation, you got to rely on these guys, hook, line, and sinker. So again, Zach, I'm sorry. You can start what you're going to talk about the Mets trade deadline.
No, don't be sorry. It's I find it interesting that you ask about who is untouchable, because it's a loaded question, because I think it depends who's available. It depends what talent is out there that the Mets can get. Because if we're talking Eugenio Suarez, you're not giving up your top pitching prospects for a 1-year rental of Eugenio Suarez. He's not gonna require that. But if you're talking maybe a pitcher under control like Joe Ryan from the Minnesota Twins, I don't think David Stearns would bat an eye. That is one of the best pitchers in baseball, and he's someone that's under control for the rest of this year and then 2 more years on top of that. And if you're giving up one of your top pitchers, maybe even 2 of them, I don't think that you could say that they're untouchable, because if you can get someone of that talent, there should be no question. There should be no back and forth. It should really just be like, what do you want? And we'll try to figure it out from there. So it's going to be interesting to see who becomes available, because there's a lot of unknowns with the way the new playoff structures are, with more teams being in the playoffs, via that third wild card spot. There's more teams that are reluctant to sell, at least this early on. Rob mentioned earlier in the show about the Marlins making a charge. Now, do I think they're going to be buyers at this deadline? Probably not. But let's say they go. They go. I don't know how many games do we have until the deadline. 12 games. So if they go 10-2, they're going to be right in the thick of it, and they might be thinking about buying. So if these teams that are kind of on the cusp of being in playoff contention decide or make a run before the deadline, decide to buy, it's going to make things a little bit more difficult for a team like the Mets, because with less sellers out there, it's going to muddy the waters, and you're going to have to overpay for guys that you really shouldn't have to. So that's going to be a big challenge for Stearns, because I think we've seen his reluctance to let go of these prospects. But in a season like this, where the Mets are one of the best teams in baseball, regardless of that big losing stretch, they need to buy. They need to buy, especially with how the league's kind of shaped out, with the injuries to the Dodgers, the Braves not being really in it, the Phillies just not being able to finally put us away, the Mets, or at least create some space. We've been right on their tails the whole time. So if you have if you have the ability to go out there and improve this team tenfold, go and do it. And now in terms of actual trade rumors, I mentioned Joe Ryan before. That's something that John Heyman had put out there, I think about a week ago or a few days ago, whatever it was. And it wasn't really that Joe Ryan's available and that the Mets are in talks for him. It was just a fun little project about him and 2 relievers. I know Danny Columbe, he's a lefty there in Minnesota, who is one of my, if not my biggest relief target, because the Mets, that's the one thing they've lacked. For God knows how long, as far as I can remember, is that true top tier lefty in the bullpen. And then obviously there's Brooks Raley coming back. He's on the horizon. He probably will be back in this bullpen come the second half of the season. But we should not treat him as that. We should not treat him as the top lefty in the pen. We should treat him as a good middle relief option, as a secondary option to whoever we get at the deadline. And if he proves to be what he was in 2022, what he has been for a majority of his career, that's even better, because then we have 2 dominant lefties in that pen to kind of to help Diaz to to kind of pick up where guys like Ryan Stanek and Reed Garrett and Brazoban at times have kind of fallen short, especially as of late. And just strengthening the back end of that bullpen is something the Mets need to do with the injuries they've sustained throughout the season. And then from there, I think they need to finally figure out what they're doing at both DH and in center field. They cannot continue this platoon. I know Rob hates it. I know Chris hates it. The platoon needs to stop. We have guys on the roster that can maybe fill that role. There's guys on the trade market that could fill that role. What are you going to do? Go out there and make a decision and finally get someone to play there every day. And if, if thing where you need to get a guy like Soto off his feet for a day, that's fine. Put him at DH. But if it's you going out there and Marte getting 300 at bats a season and Winker getting 300 at bats, guys like that, it can't continue to happen. We don't want any more split times. It should be an 80% share to whoever's starting at DH, and then the rest of the time will be taken for guys that are dealing with dings and dents and bruises that just need to get off their feet, but you need to keep that bat in the lineup. Guys like Soto, Lindor, Nimmo, Alonso even, but he doesn't get hurt. Knock on wood. And from there, the big question is what bat are they going to get? Because they need to get a bat. That's first and foremost. Chris has been talking about Jarren Duran, and I would love Jarren Duran. He's the best center fielder potentially on the market, but with the way the Red Sox have been playing, there's been no answer to that yet, and it's making it seem more and more unlikely as the days go on that they're going to part with him, at least this season, where you're kind of not selling low on him, but you're leaving some value on the table, trading him in at the deadline because there's almost a rush to do it, and you're going to have to you're under the gun of the July 31st to get a deal done if you really want to move him. Whereas in the offseason, they can extract maximum value out of him to a team that truly needs that center fielder for the next few years for a playoff push. And then from there, if they're not going to go the center field route, where do they go? Do they go DH? I mean, there's guys like Ryan O'Hearn that's available in Baltimore. I'm sure someone like Ramon Laureano. I know I mentioned that to you guys in our chat the other day. I don't think he's a top tier option, but he is a lot better than what we've had at DH all season, and that could be an option there. And then third base, the big name, Eugenio Suarez, who is not going to cost a ton. He really isn't. And DeComo actually brought this up the other day in an SNY coverage of the trade deadline, and he said that that's someone that the Mets should 100% be going after. Whether they are or they aren't, it's a different story. But if they do go after someone like that, he said it's not going to cost much because of how much he's owed, and it only being a 2-3 month rental depending on how far you go in this postseason. So they got a lot to figure out, and it helps that they do have a lot of positional versatility. I mean, on this roster, McNeil is someone who has been able to play center field very well, at least in terms of his skill set. And they have guys that can play both second and third base in the infield, so they don't have to key in on one position that they need to upgrade. They can just kind of go for best player available and figure it out from there with what they have on the roster, because I think one big bat changes this lineup. And they can actually get that someone that can pick up the slack where Pete Alonso and Juan Soto don't provide. That's going to be big because the Mets have left a lot of runs on the table, and if they can get someone that can pick them up, it would pay dividends for this team. It really would.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I just want to let everybody know, and Chris just put it in the chat. If you got any questions, guys, put it in the chat now. So over the next about 5 minutes or so, we're gonna start answering your questions. So I got 2 so far. If you any my channel or Chris's channel, you can just put your question and I'll mark it. I'll put it in the queue, and then we'll answer it individually at the end, and then we'll go from there. All right, there we go, guys. So I see the questions coming, so that's great sign, guys. So this is my favorite topic when it comes to prospects and deadline. Yeah, selling or buying, it's always a fun topic, but it's been 10 years, guys. 10 years. The last time the Mets made a blockbuster deal at the trade deadline, and that was Yoenis Cespedes, right? That shifted this average team, which they were, to a top team just by bringing Yoenis Cespedes in. He changed the dynamic of that team. And I'm not saying that this team needs a dynamic player like that, but I can guarantee you they need something close to that. Because if this team is not going to figure out things to run as a score position, they need a lot of help. And that's what I worry about when it comes to this Mets team. So I think this team needs a blockbuster deal, right? You can decide where you want that to go. Obviously, I don't think the blockbuster deal is going to be a bullpen arm. I think there's so many of them, and that's why I'm not even worried about the bullpen. And I know a lot of people are voting in the poll, and they have the big bat as one of the most votes out of, I think, 50 something votes, that the bat is what they want more than anything else. And bullpen is kind of third, because I think a lot of people realize, at least I hope you do, that there's so many bullpen arms out there that you can get good bullpen arms, because you don't need great bullpen arms. I mean, it'd be nice to get, but you can get B-level bullpen arms that, Chris and Zach were talking about. I think you need two lefties in this bullpen. Rayleigh's coming back. He's that soft tossing lefty. And I think you need a hard throwing lefty as well. I think the Mets have lacked two lefties in this bullpen. They tried it, and it didn't really happen for long, but I think that was their goal of having two lefties in the bullpen. And they need this. They need two lefties in the bullpen, in my opinion, especially just go through the National League. Look at all the lefties in the lineup that you have to deal with in the Cubs, the Phillies, the Dodgers. Like, there's a lot of guys there that you have to deal with. You need lefties in this bullpen, especially trying to get through the National League. The blockbuster deal, honestly, if it's a big rotation arm or a big bat, I want one big blockbuster move. I don't think this team is going to be good enough if you don't get something on the market that's either a big bat or a big arm that can help put this team over the top. I feel like if they go through this, this little line of demarcation of, this level line of, all right players, I think we're going to fall short again, because I can guarantee you the Dodgers are going to go out there and get better. The Phillies are going to get out there better. The Phillies are a desperate team. Make no mistake about it, guys. The Phillies are a desperate team. They're a team that's getting older. Their prime guys are kind of falling out of their prime. They're losing a couple of guys in free agency after this year. Pitchers in their rotation are getting older. They're a desperate team. Don't think for a second the Phillies aren't going to make a big trade. They're going to make a big trade that's going to shock and rock this MLB timeline of trades. I'm telling you right now, the Phillies, I don't know if anybody listens to Philly talk, sports talk radio, but I'm telling you this right now, every fan that went on their radio station wants a big deal. And obviously they have different opinions of what big deal, but every one of them do. And Dombrowski, he even said it. He says he's looking for the big fish. That was the exact words the other day on their sports talk radio when he spoke to their radio station the other day. So he didn't make no mistake about it. He is going for a big fish. Whatever they need, he's going to get. I'm telling you this right now. So if the Mets half-ass this deadline, good luck winning this division. I'm telling you that right now, because they're not good enough. I'm telling you that right now, guys. And for the prospect huggers out there, and I know there's some in the chat, and I understand last year why they didn't go out and get a big rotation arm like I said they should have, because that's what ultimately cost them in the playoffs, was the pitching fell apart later in the NLCS. This team is way too good not to do what you need to do to get everything you need. You can't get average players here. It's not going to work. You need one big move, and I would prefer it to be a big bat, to be quite honest with you. But if it's a rotation arm that you can get, and I do think there's options out there on the market where you can probably get a top-line starter and a solid hitter in a same deal. And I brought it up in the video the other day about Zach Gallen, and I brought up Josh Naylor. And the reason why I brought up Josh Naylor, he was not the big bat. I understand he's not a power bat. It's not going to, tickle you down below. I tell you that. It's not going to get you excited. But the Mets have lacked putting bat on the ball with runners in scoring position. Josh Naylor nearly has 100 hits already on the year. He's batting .290. It's a guy that puts the bat on the ball and is a base hit machine. The Mets lack that in this offense. They've been anytime they have runners in scoring position, they're all or nothing. They're either striking out or they're not, or they're grounding out softly to first base or second base or in the infield. There's no situational hitting with this team at all. And I think it's a huge problem. I'm not saying Josh Naylor is going to be the end all be all and is going to be the fixer of this offense, but you need somebody that's in the between 5 and 7 in this lineup that can actually put the bat on the ball, that can, hit a sac fly, get the ball to the outfield, something other than strikeouts constantly with runners in scoring position with less than 2 outs. That has been the biggest bugaboo and problem for this team all year. So they need to find a guy that has been clutch with runners in scoring position. Now, it doesn't have to be Josh Naylor. That's the guy I put out there. You could get Josh Naylor on your own and maybe save a prospect. You don't have to give too much for Naylor. But I brought it up. If you guys haven't seen the video, I'll say it right now. Go get Gallen and go get Naylor as a package and throw Acuna and Tidwell. And if you got to throw another prospect in there, go right ahead. Because I think Gallen, moving from Arizona to New York, I think he needs to change the scenery, in my opinion. I think it's run its course in Arizona. And I just think, the pitching lab has shown that they have done things. They fixed guys. And I think you can get Gallen in there and seeing what's his issue in that pitching lab. I think he can become a very good, maybe even ace-type looking pitcher that he was in the past. And, I know a lot of people in my comments in that video were saying, oh, that's probably not enough. They might laugh you out of the ballpark. Yeah, they might. But that's a good starting point, right? You got to have conversations. You got to start throwing packages out there. Because what if Arizona's like, yeah, sure, we'll take that. We'll take that package. And you get away with Tidwell and Acuna for Gallen and Naylor. And now you just solved another rotation arm. You got another bat in this lineup that's not a power bat, but is a guy that's a 290, 285, 290 hitter that has a little bit of pop, but puts the bat on the ball in the middle of this lineup, which this team does not do consistently enough. And I do understand that Josh Naylor, he does play first base, a little bit of outfield, but I'm looking at the DH spot, right? We have gotten no power from the DH spot with Marte and Winker. I know Winker could have been a 15 home run guy, but Josh Naylor can be an 18. He's on pace for, I think, 18, 19 home runs, which is more than enough that you can use any DH, especially now. I don't think you can. Maybe you can find a big power hitter at the DH spot. That's probably an offseason move, Schwarber for Chris in the offseason. But
yes,
right now,
please.
I think you need somebody that puts the bat on the ball. And you know what Josh Naylor does? He actually stays healthy. Unlike Marte, unlike Winker. Like, you can't trust those guys. You can't go after this deadline and say, well, we got Marte and Winker. You'll have pitchforks out at Citi Field if you do that. So I'm not saying to go get Gallen. I'm not saying to just go after Josh Naylor, but that was just an idea of packages where you can try to see if you can get them with that. If they say yes, both of those guys are free agents. Naylor and Gallen are free agents. So I think it's going to cost because there's not that many top-line starters on the market. So it's going to cost you. It's just, are you willing to do it? And the thing everybody was talking about with Durant earlier, the worst case scenario for the New York Mets is the Boston Red Sox to get hot now, because it kind of makes their decision either easier not trading Durant or kind of on that line there saying, I don't know if we're going to be a seller or a buyer, especially with Durant, because all it does, it raises the price of Cedric Mullins, and Luis Robert is still not going to cost a lot, but it's even going to raise the price of his value a little bit, because if Durant's off the market, that means more teams are going to be going after Mullins and Luis Robert. And we already know Luis Robert has like 7 or 8 teams after him, which is only going to jack up the price. So no matter what you do other than bullpen, a big bat or a big rotation arm, or even I would say a B rotation arm or a B bat on the market, you're overpaying for any of those because there's very little of them. And if some teams decide they don't want to sell, that is less players available at those positions that you're going to get, which is going to be even more of an overpay. And why I think you can't get out of this deadline without overpaying for somebody. And I don't want to overpay for Luis Robert. If you're going to overpay, go get Cedric Mullins. If you're going to overpay, go get another top line starter. If it's not Zach Gallen, name another top line starter. Go get him. Like, if David Stearns thinks he's not going to overpay for any of those two positions, then he's an idiot and he shouldn't be running this organization, because it's a bad job, right? You can have 97 bullpen arms getting optioned every single day on this team. It seems like he's the only one that options every bullpen arm that you can think of in baseball. And I don't think it helps his manager one bit, because Mendoza doesn't even know who's in his bullpen every single day because of all the options that he continues to do. I think the fact that I don't think David Stearns is going to make the big move. I've said that for a while. If he does, he'll shut me up and I'll give him a ton of credit. But he needs to know that he's going to overpay for something very good. And if that's the rotation arm or is that a big bat, he's going to overpay. There's more teams that are willing to buy than are selling. And it's the same guys a lot of the guys are looking at. The teams are looking for a lot of the same guys. So the price is going to go up. We'll see if he's going to do it. But I don't know, guys. I just feel like you're going to have to overpay for somebody. Anybody who's good. Bullpen, I think you can get away with kind of, I'm not saying half-assing it, but you can get away with not overpaying for bullpen arms because there are going to be so many available. But when it comes to rotation or the bat that a lot of us want, you're not going to get away with, sneaking away, let's throw Tidwell and, Jeremy Rodriguez or somebody that's a top 20 prospect that nobody's heard of. You're not going to get away with that and trying to get a really good bat in here or a really good arm in here. It's just not going to work out, guys.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see who is called upon for the Mets. I think we know the Sproats, the McLeans, the Tongs. They're going to be asked. I mean, they're every team's going to ask for them. They're going to ask for them. They're going to ask for Carson Bench. They're going to ask for Jed Williams. I'm curious to see how many teams actually start prioritizing going for a guy like Eugenio, or not Eugenio Suarez, Ronnie Mauricio. I had Eugenio Suarez on my mind, but Ronnie Mauricio is someone that should be very interesting come this deadline, because he is in the major leagues right now. He's showing improvement. He's showing the flashes of what he truly can be, what the talent truly is for him, and what it can become at when he truly puts it all together. And to be ready, to be MLB ready, it allows teams that are not fully out of it, but also kind of hanging on by some threads, like a Diamondbacks, to make a move, trade off some of the guys that are not going to be there next year, but also still be competitive this year and have someone to fill that hole for the next 3, 4, 5 years, however many it may be. So it should be interesting what they do with that depth. I mean, Mauricio in particular, but that depth here at the major league level. And what prospects are actually called upon, because I think that'll kind of dictate where Stearns goes. I mean, if guys are asking for Sproat, Tom, McLean in 1-year rentals, or I guess half-season rentals, it's not going to happen. It just isn't. And it's going to be an absurd ask, and Mets fans are going to be upset. We'll all be upset. But it's also going to be the right move in some regard. But then if teams are making guys like Joe Ryan's, Edward Cabrera's available, and they're asking for some of these bigger prospects, that's something that Stearns is going to have to – he's going to have to be willing to part with some of these bigger prospects, because those are guys that are proven here at the major league level, are going to make an impact this year and also for the next 1, 2, 3 years, however many years are left on these guys' contracts. So he's gonna have to try to figure something out, what he's gonna have to key in on, if it's gonna be the rental market, or if it's gonna be guys with some control as well. And then from there, what bats are going to be available too, because we don't really know much of what's available. We know Eugenio Suarez is available. We know Adolis Garcia is available, whatever that may be. I hope the Mets don't go for Adolis Garcia. But outside of that, you really haven't heard much. You kind of know teams aren't there, but then they don't really have many big names that the Mets are going to want or need, because their needs, while they do have some flexibility here, there are fairly specific. And I think, you're mentioning someone like Josh Naylor, Rob. I I really don't want them to get a left-handed bat. I know you can't be picky come the deadline, but this team is so left-handed heavy. I mean, they need to add a right-handed bat if possible. Certain players will kind of they'll make that decision easier, and they'll make it something that the Mets should just find cave in on. But if possible, they need to find someone to produce from the right side of the plate, because almost all their production's been from the left side of the plate this year, and a majority of their starters are left-handed. So this is going to be interesting. I know you don't believe in him making the big move. I do think he's going to make a big move, and I see the Mets really making a big splash here at this deadline. I really, really do.
God, I hope so.
I think all the
Henry
reports
just
are saying it too. So
listen, Henry just took literally the thought out of my brain in the chat. Do you think the A's move Shea Langoliers?
I was thinking about that too. I was just looking at the roster for the A's just to have an idea. I tell you right now, I trade everything possible to get that kid. He is awesome, man.
yeah.
I mean, listen, 3 years left on his deal. He's 27 years old. He is exactly like basically what we wanted Francisco Alvarez to be. So when there's questions surrounding Francisco Alvarez, do I think it's likely that Alvarez gets traded? Of course not. I'm sure teams are still going to inquire about the upside of Francisco Alvarez, and he's, I mean, of course, a lot younger. But Shea Langoliers is not 30 plus years old here. He's still got controllability, and that is a very good it's a very good skilled offensive catcher right there. Like, his defense is not, the best in the world, but when you have a Luis Torrens and Hayden Senger in your organization, this is maybe thinking big and out of the box here, but Shea Langoliers, I mean, that is just a light year of an offensive improvement right there from the catching position that the Mets have been just trying to figure out so far this season. So I don't know if they move him. I think the A's are still in this weird period of their organization where they have, they just extended Brent Rooker. I think Lawrence Butler might have got an extension, if I'm not mistaken. And it's just like they were trying to go out there. They were ultra aggressive this offseason, surprisingly. How many guys are they going to move off of while selling this deadline? Jeffrey Springs is another guy that's a starter for them, a lefty that's having a decent season as well. So I don't know. Henry, that's a great point. I don't know, but Shea Langoliers would be a really good get for anybody.
Yeah, you know what's funny about Langoliers is the fact that just thinking about it now, the Mets held back Alvarez longer than they should have, or I know that was the idea, but they added another year to his service time. I do wonder if the Mets have thinking about, maybe they are thinking about Shea Langoliers, or they just like Luis Torrens as a backstop and trying to have Alvarez in a package. Because that service time is a big deal to a lot of these low budget teams and teams that never ever spend, like the Marlins, like the Pirates, like the Rockies, teams like that, teams like the White Sox right now, the Athletics. Those guys are enticing to those teams because of the control they have. I do wonder if Stearns left Alvarez there, not just to figure out things with the bat, but to add that extra year of service time, maybe because teams are asking about Alvarez in trade talks. Is that the conversation you think they might be having, where teams might be asking for Alvarez? I mean, they sent them to the minors, and maybe teams are like, well, maybe they don't believe in him anymore. They got Torrens. He's been great behind the plate. Offensively, not so good. But do you guys think that maybe that's a possibility that Alvarez wasn't good, and it was only a matter of time before the Mets had to make that decision, sending him back down to the minors? Do you think that's kind of like I'm not going to say a blessing in disguise, but a little bit of a upside or a plus that keeping them in the minors longer than a lot of people thought they would, and getting that extra year of service time because teams are asking about Alvarez in trade talks?
It's funny that you bring that up, because there's someone else that the Mets did just make a move before the Orioles series, or in the middle of the Orioles series, to keep a year of service time, and that's Luis Angel Acuna. I don't think they're going to do that for Francisco Alvarez. I don't think that's in the realm of thought for the Mets. I think they will not be moving him. I think he will be the starting catcher come this Friday when the Mets pick back up after this All-Star break, or Thursday, whenever they start. But Luis Angel Acuna is someone I think the Mets not only are thinking about moving or being called about, but also did brought him up as a call up in that Orioles series for that specific reason. They are keeping a year of service time to add more value to him. And when he's been up over the past, I don't know, I guess month or 2 month and a half when he has been in the major leagues, he hasn't played at all. I mean, they don't want to crush his value. And when he went down to AAA, he was playing well. So that's someone that I think might have boosted his trade value a little bit. And the Mets are probably looking to move and cash in on that chip because he really has no part on this team. I mean, he needs to go to a team that's going to be able to kind of ride with the bad and let him develop at his own pace, because right here for the Mets, he's just a glorified pinch runner, you know, and late inning defensive replacement. So that has no part on a championship team if they have value to be traded for a better piece. And before I let you guys get into that real quick, I do want to bring up something that I think that Frank Major actually commented. Now, I want to preface this by saying I don't think the Mets go out and get this guy, but I wonder if someone like Mike Trout becomes available at this trade deadline. I know it's been talked about for so many years, but the Angels finally deciding to move away from him and capture
he has a no trade
whatever trade value is left. He does, and you know how you were bringing up the Phillies going for a big move. Why not bring home the hometown kid to play center field, the one position that they do need with no other big center field?
That would be like son of a bitch.
I could see that
Why do you have to be a Phillies guy, you know, Eagles guy and all that?
That's a lot of money though associated with him. So I'm curious to see how much the Angels have to take on of the remaining contract. I mean, he's going to be getting paid $37+ million a year for the next what? I mean, I don't know how many years he has left. I think 4, 5, 6 maybe. And I think at that point they're getting rid of Nick Castellanos most likely. So
yeah, and that he would fit in right field since he's playing a lot of corner outfield now. That would make a lot of sense. So look, the fact that they did it with Acuna and now they did it with Alvarez. I always thought Acuna was going to be on the block. I always thought he was going to be the prize trade chip as a position player that was always going to be on the market. I know people killed me for it all year, and Chris, you know that for a fact. Zach just said it. That's my favorite word, glorified base runner. He's a pinch runner and a defensive replacement. That is completely stopping his growth and development for this organization. So that just the way they're treating him just shows you exactly how they're thinking. And I think they're trading Acuna. I think Acuna is in every trade talk that they're talking to with any team that's a high value target that they're looking at. Acuna is in this trade. That's why any trade proposal I do over the next couple of weeks, and you guys are going to get very annoyed about all my videos because they're going to be a lot over this next 2 weeks of trade deadline talk. Acuna is going to be in every trade proposal. Just an FYI to everybody, just so you know, Acuna is in that trade. And I know there's a lot of fans out there of Acuna, but the way the Mets are treating him and how they're valuing Mauricio and Beatty a lot more than Acuna on this team tells you all you need to know. And not that they don't believe in Acuna. I think they do. But you have to start trading certain guys that play the same position. You got too many guys. It's a logjam. It doesn't work. You can't play these guys all. There's too many guys that play the same position that are on this roster. It just doesn't make sense. It's not sustainable at all, especially when you want one guy to take a job, but yet you sit him every 2 days. Like, it just doesn't work. The platoon thing does not work. We've said this forever. Does not work. So let's get to the question, guys, that people are having. I got about 10 here. So let's run them through in order from first to last. So Dolo says, and Dolo's the first 2 questions on the queue here, but here we go. It says, question for you guys. Will there be a trade that will shock all of us in the magnitude of a Doncic? Yeah, guys. Whoever wants to start it.
At this deadline, I do not see it. I think there's too many teams that are in this hunt, and I just don't see any big name under contract being traded. I'll preface it by saying that I think there's some big names do get moved, some guys that are on expiring deals, especially for teams that are maybe in it, maybe not in it, holding on by a thread, that they'll decide to move these pieces for controllable players that will be a big part of them, come the rest of the season, even next year. So it'll be an interesting deadline because I see there's a lot of expiring contracts that are going to be made available, but there's not that big name with a ton of years left that's going to be made available unless someone decides to really take a dump come Friday and fall right out of this race.
Yeah, I also am going to agree with that. I don't think minus that Mike Trout, I guess, proposal. I think it's already happened, as Pentrese is saying, with the Devers trade that happened a little bit earlier this season. I think that was probably as close as we're going to get. I could see Mike Trout definitely being moved. But other than that, I agree. I think other than what we know right now, there's really no other big name that I can just see happening for a contending team at this point. I think the closest that you would get if this team decides to do this, which would be such an disorganization type of move, is if the Pirates somehow, some way trade
O'Neal
Skeens.
Cruz.
That's
Or Cruz, too,
I'm
yeah.
saying Skeens. I mean, I don't think even O'Neal Cruz is like that level magnitude of like Doncic-esque, but I think Skeens is the only shot that we have to see. And I think that if that is, I mean, they've got a decent young pitching core. I think they have another top 5 pipeline prospect coming up at some point soon as well. I forgot the guy's name. Definitely not at the magnitude of Skeens. I mean, it'd be in their best interest to figure something out to make it work with Skeens and maybe just get their heads out of their asses and start investing in the team so you can keep them around. But I think they'd be better off served not rushing and just waiting to the off season if they were going to seriously consider that. So I don't think so, to answer Dolo's question.
Yeah,
I think there's one
Zach.
quick thing I wanted to say. I think it'll be interesting to see what some of these smaller market teams without the checkbooks of guys like Steve Cohen out there decide to do with expiring contracts of really good players. And one team and one player I have in mind specifically is the Milwaukee Brewers and Freddie Peralta, because that name's been thrown out there a lot, and that would be a pretty big name to be moved. But again, it's an expiring deal, and that's a team that tends to not spend a lot of money on free agents. So it'll be interesting to see who is made available in that grouping of players. Good players, expiring deals on smaller market teams that are going to be demanding a big contract. You've seen the Rays do that a ton over the years. I think you've seen the Brewers do it here and there. So I think it'll be interesting to see what of those players are made available.
Yeah, it would be interesting if the Brewers do trade Peralta, because in that trade they're going to want somebody who's going to help their team right away, because they're right in the hunt, for the playoffs. So I don't think they're going to want prospects that are 2-3 years away. They're probably going to want somebody that can help this team, if it's a position player or pitchers, right away, that can help this team if they're going to trade Peralta. And listen, if they got a package that they like, I mean, the Brewers have done that for years. So, and Stearns basically set that up in that organization that way.
A big name, semi-big name. It's not quite Luka Doncic-esque, but it's someone that doesn't fit the timeline of this organization right now that just got an extension this past offseason that I wanted this offseason if they were willing to move him. I'm curious. There's a team that we just talked about, Brent Rooker. He's 30 years old. He just signed a 5-year deal, and his contract for the type of production offensively that he provides is a steal. If you just looked at that 5-year contract that he just signed, maybe the A's figure out that, listen, a 30-year-old right now doesn't really fit our timeline exactly, and they decide to cut costs. It would be a head-scratching move of like, why extend him in the first place? But maybe I'm holding out hope, maybe, but yeah, it's still unlikely, I will say. But Brent Rooker is definitely someone that I definitely watch out for to see if the A's are seriously considering just revamping.
Yeah, the A's are weird because they gave a couple of contracts this offseason with Luis Severino, obviously extending a couple of guys. I don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, would I be shocked if they sell a couple of guys? No. Would I be shocked if they keep a couple of guys? No, because I have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
They should be setting themselves up for the Vegas, team that's going over there when they go to Vegas. They should be setting themselves up for years to come. I have no idea what they're doing, but it would be interesting to see if Rooker becomes available and what the A's are going to do, because I don't have no idea, because it looks like Severino is going to be on the market. So, it's something that I don't know what the hell the A's are going to do. Dolo asked another question. It's kind of similar to what he asked the first question, but we already talked about Trout. Just will there be a major trade made? I do think there's going to be one big blockbuster trade, or like earth-shattering trade where I don't think any of us see it coming. A player that nobody probably thought would be on the market, and it just so happens that it just goes like that, and it just rocks the baseball world. And I feel like there's always one every year where it's like, whoa. And I think it's going to be bigger than Devers. I know that's hard to say. I think it's going to be bigger than the Devers trade. And I don't know why I feel that way. And trust me, I don't believe it's going to be the Mets making that deal, to be quite honest with you, which I would love for them to be that team, but I don't think it's going to be them. Again, watch out for the Phillies. I think they're a team that is looking to make that earth-shattering move. And, maybe it is that Mike Trout. I don't know if that's earth-shattering, but that would be a shock to everybody. I think Mike Trout in Philly would just be like shit. That's not going to be fun to deal with, even though he's up there in age and very injured.
Oh, sorry, Zach. One team that we haven't talked about is the Braves and how they're going to be also selling this deadline. I don't see them not selling this deadline, so I'm kind of curious. But that's an interesting organization. I mean, of course, they're not going to trade anything to the Mets, but I'm curious, like which pieces outside of Marcell Ozuna, who really, I mean, there's a lot of off this field stuff with that guy too that we don't need to talk about. But like, he's probably gonna be a commodity at this deadline, given the bat, given what he's posted over the past season and a half. I'm just curious what other pieces outside of Ozuna they're going to be selling off too.
I'm curious to see what the Guardians do too, because they got two big players that it would net them a ton in return. And that's Jose Ramirez and Emmanuel Clase. And I don't know what Jose Ramirez's contract looks like in terms of any trade clause. I don't know if he has anything like that, but that is not only is he a great player, he's a bit aging. I think he's 33 right now, but that is a very, very valuable contract. And even if he's only good for like 2 more years past this one, that is a contract you have no problem eating with how team friendly it is. Do I see him getting moved? I don't think so, but that is a team to be to watch, because even when they made the playoffs, I mean, they made the playoffs last year, but that still wasn't a good team. You saw at the beginning half of this year, they were really good at the beginning of the year, and they just kind of fell off a cliff and really showed their true colors. And with the inability to really provide or do anything offensively, they really don't have anyone outside of Jose Ramirez and Steve Kwan. So that's a team that's probably on the cusp of a rebuild and should probably think about selling some of these bigger names sooner rather than later.
Yep. Very, very, it's going to be very interesting for sure when it comes to that. Ray is asking, what are we getting realistically come deadline? I guess I'll answer that one first, considering the fact that I don't think there's going to be a big trade for the Mets. I don't think it's going to be a half-ass deadline. I don't think it's going to be something that I always complain about. I think it's going to be a good deadline for the Mets. It's not going to get me overly excited. It might get some more excited than me. I think it's going to be I would say a solid deadline. That I don't think. I mean, if I'm shocked at this deadline that the Mets do a lot more than I thought, then I'd be extremely happy and excited. But I think it's going to be a solid deadline. I think it's going to get the needs of this team, but I don't think it's going to be anybody that we're going to be so excited about.
I think the one name I will say, I think the biggest or the most moves we'll see probably is the bullpen. I think the Mets have the ability to get 2 bullpen arms, one splash, quote unquote. And by the way, that Clase conversation is actually pretty interesting, because you got Edwin Diaz, who is clearly an all-star and having a great season, and he has the ability to opt out after. I mean, I guess if he wants a longer term contract, but the value of his deal is already like tops for the closing market. So he can opt out, get a longer term deal if he really wanted to, and that would be kind of the Edwin Diaz replacement, so to speak, on a very cheaper deal. But you just have to give up like a lot of pieces, I would say. But I really do think, I don't know why I have this feeling, but it just seems like a David Stearns move to me. I think Seth Lugo is coming back to Queens, dude. I think Seth Lugo is coming back to Queens.
That would excite me because he's been damn good. And that's a rotation piece that I think would be worth going after. And I think that's better than Gallen, to be quite honest with you.
You have your rotation set up as Manaea, Senga, Peterson, Lugo, Montas, and then Clay Holmes that you can decide if you want to keep in the rotation or move. that's a rotation that I can rock with for the second half.
I
I'm
agree.
sorry, especially if we shore up the bullpen, I'll take that all day. Now, the one thing is that, you know, how sour is Seth Lugo on the Mets organization, albeit it was a different regime before David Stearns. You know, how sour is he at, you know, New York in general? So
Yeah.
I know that was a lot of, you know, that was what caused him to leave, or originally when he wanted the rotation spot, the Mets didn't want to give it to him. But that's a guy that has went to Kansas City on a very decent contract. It was a 3-year deal. I think he has one more year after this one left. So he would be on the team, whoever trades for him this deadline, on the team for one more year. And I don't know. He's just been, ever since he went to Kansas City, he took off as a starter. We're not even talking about a good season this season. He had really good numbers in 2024 for the Royals as well. So I'm very interested in Seth Lugo. And given, and I've said this, I made a video about the starting pitching market. I talked about Keller, Severino, and Lugo. I think Lugo is the 1A get. No, he's not a front level starter. You're not thinking about a true quote unquote ace when you talk about Seth Lugo. But, you know, given what the Mets already have, that's a decent rotation if you bring him in. And this is a team that has talked extensively, you know, trades this offseason. So David Stearns might have an established connection with that Royals organization, or at least we'd hope. So that, if you had to ask me like what my surest prediction would be for the Mets, is reuniting with Seth Lugo, I would say.
Yeah, mine, I'd have to say, I think I think the Mets do go out and get a hitter. Where they decide to add, I don't know, and I couldn't really tell you. But I do think the Mets go out and get two big bullpen arms, and this is what they'll do. I think they'll go out and get, like Chris said, they'll get some form of a replacement for Edwin Diaz. I think the Mets need to be prepared for a world in which Edwin Diaz decides to opt out after the season. And I'm going to tell you this right now: I do not think David Stearns is going to pay him money. I mean, just
No, I
if
don't think
Edwin
so either.
Diaz opts out, he's gone. He will not be a Met anymore, and that would be sad to say. But also the right thing. That's kind of a crazy thing to say, but well, that's a talk for another day. You know, bringing up Diaz. But I think the Mets need to prepare for a world without Edwin Diaz and going out and getting a big closer slash bottom of the end of the game, late inning reliever is should be at the top of their list. And kind of funny enough, I think they should go and get a long man out of the pen. The Mets are going to be going to the 6-man rotation, or at least are going to need to give Senga the extra day's rest when they are in longer stretches of games. I think they can avoid it for most of the second half, but I don't think it's completely avoidable. But getting that long man would be big for them, not only for Senga, being able to throw someone in spot starts, I guess, but someone that you're comfortable with doing that, but also someone that you can kind of piggyback Clay Holmes, who might need to be limited in innings leading up to this postseason, down the stretch. So that would be, I think, a very Mets deadline, going out and getting two nice bullpen pieces.
Yeah, I do agree that the only big move I could see the Mets making would be like David Bednar or Emmanuel Clase. I think those are the two guys, because again, they got to be prepared for the Diaz opt out, and you can't be waiting for him to opt out and you have nobody to replace him. What do you want, Stanek to be our closer? Like that's not going to cut it for us. So
I wonder if Mason Miller would be available, because the Mets are going to need someone with under contract, and he's someone who's not had the best year, but the stuff is there, and that just kind of feels like a David Stearns guy, a stuff monster with years, and can just be that Diaz replacement if he does decide to opt out. It would cost you a good bit, because he is under contract, I think, for at least 3 more years, if not 4. So
yeah,
that would be a fun.
Try to run through these a little quicker with the questions. Let's see. Only issue are prospects that we're hugging, aka Beatty, Ronnie Acuna, Alvarez. Yeah, I don't think they're hugging them, or their value is low, to be quite honest. I don't think Acuna's value is low. I just think the Mets always felt like Acuna is going to be the one,
Taking
be the odd man out. And Alvarez, I don't think the value's as low as people think. I think having a top prospect, or I don't think Alvarez is a top prospect anymore, but I think there's value in the possibility of his power and his service time and the years of control is very appealing to guys, the teams like Pittsburgh, Rockies, the bottom barrel teams that never spend money. So the value Alvarez for those teams is probably a lot higher than teams that are kind of in the middle of the road that are not looking at Alvarez as a high value target to obtain in a package. But I don't think any of these guys have, I think Ronnie Mauricio probably has the most value out of all these guys, to be
I
honest with
think
you.
Ronnie's gone.
Are the Mets willing to trade Ronnie Mauricio? Because I think him and Beatty, Stearns loves those two guys. Obviously, the way they are playing them this year, especially when Ronnie came back, they love these two guys. I don't think Beatty or Ronnie Mauricio are going anywhere, to be quite honest with you guys.
I disagree. I think Mauricio's gone.
Really?
I'd bet the house on it. Or I was going to say Ronnie Mauricio. I think Ronnie Mauricio's gone. I'd bet the
Okay.
house on it.
I
Personally,
think Beatty's gone over him, honestly.
Really?
I think Beatty's gone. I've said this but I also said this from this offseason, really. I've said this from this offseason. So it's nothing against Brett Beatty. I just think that, I mean, at a certain point, you have to, for me, if you're asking me who the better player is, who has more tools, I would say Ronnie Mauricio for sure. I mean, some people could disagree. I mean, I know you love Brett Beatty, Zach. I know that. We've had these conversations time and time again between you and me. But for me, if you had to ask, I still think both of them are on the table. I think that if a team definitely wants Mauricio over Beatty, you got to give him Mauricio, of course, if it's the right piece. But if you ask me, if you have the choice and if you have the ability to have the choice between Mauricio and Beatty, I'm gonna let Beatty or Mauricio stick around over Beatty.
Agreed. I would rather Mauricio over Beatty. I just think the talent's too good, but I think too many teams are going to be calling for Mauricio, and I think his trade value is a lot higher than anyone really thinks because having someone with that talent show the growth he has here at the major league level with just everything with him. I mean, he's under contract for I guess 5 more years, and the talent's there. The talent's there, and teams are going to want him to replace their third baseman or their DH, whomever they're trading. And I think if you're going and trying to get guys like Eugenio Suarez, that caliber, I think if you throw a name like Ronnie Mauricio out there, I don't think there's many teams that could beat that because that is a direct replacement that can go and provide for them this year and keep them in contention. So I think the Mets, if they really want to improve this team to what I think they need to, what everyone else thinks they need to, what we want them to, you're gonna have to part with Ronnie Mauricio.
Yeah, 100%. And Chris, you asked me that question a couple of weeks ago of, was any of these guys you're not willing to trade that are on this team in Mauricio, Acuna, Beatty, Vientos? I think every one of them should be on the table. I truly believe you got to trade 2 of these guys. There's no reason to keep 3 of these guys on the roster. It does not make sense. You got to figure out, you got to make a decision. Like, if it's the wrong decision, it's the wrong decision, right? You're not going to know that for a couple of years down the road if you made the right decision. But if it's a proven guy that you can bring in here to help your team now, then so be it. We'll worry about the consequences later. But if it wins you a World Series, nobody cares if this guy turns into a Pete Crow Armstrong. We're just not going to give it to him because most likely they're going to be on the Marlins or the Pirates, and they're not going anywhere anytime soon. So who cares? So I truly believe 2 of these guys are got to go. In my opinion, I truly believe that.
The only problem with that, and of course, we don't know exactly how other teams around this league view Luis Angel Acuna and what the Mets have utilized him and the role that they've utilized him in. And anybody that's watched these streams and videos that I do, like, that I am a big Luis Angel Acuna fan. But I think objectively, unless he changes his approach, I mean, we saw what he was able to do with the bat down the stretch last season, but this season he's looked dreadful with the bat because his approach just simply isn't conducive to the type of player he is in his skill set. I think that his offensive upside in general is still behind. Like there's tiers to this, right? This is Luis Angel Acuna and his offensive ability, and here is Vientos, Mauricio, and Beatty, right? And I think that saying we got to get rid of 2 of these guys is like easy because we'd be like, okay, Acuna and then whoever else, but that just might not be realistic. So I don't think that there's a scenario that Luis Angel Acuna is the headliner of any trade for the Mets for a decent piece. I don't think so. I think it's going to take Luis Angel Acuna plus, rather than, like Zach was saying with the Diamondbacks, if you were really interested in Eugenio Suarez, you can make Mauricio as your headliner and potentially not have to give up anything else or not much else, if anything, your top 15. So it's just levels to this, really.
Yep. I tend to agree with that. Let's see. Patrick says, Rob, what do you think of trading Matt Allen? That's a guy that has no value right now. The Mets,
I think
this
he's
guy's got
injured.
yeah. This
He's
guy
injured. You know?
got injured again.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. So yeah,
Really?
no
I didn't
value.
even hear about that.
I
That
didn't
poor
even
guy.
know that. So there you
Yeah,
go.
I saw it. I saw the rumblings on Twitter the other day, and someone just said,
So much talent, and the injuries just damn.
yeah.
Well, there goes that question. All right. Next. Explosive says, "What? Oh, sorry, wrong one. What about Gallon and Monty in a package? I don't think both of them are getting traded in one
Monty?
package. That would be stupid if Arizona does that because
Jordan Montgomery?
I think he's is he back Montgomery? He's
I
he's
have no idea. That name is something I haven't thought about since like what
Yeah.
two
Yeah.
off seasons ago. He hasn't pitched yet this year.
Oh yeah, so guess you can't package those guys. All right, next one. One of Beatty Acuna Vientos. We have talked about that with Easy. We already talked about those guys.
Yeah.
What about Robbie Ray?
Not available.
Yeah,
Giants
exactly.
aren't trading him.
Yeah, they're not trading them.
I don't even want that guy. I don't like Robbie Ray.
Yeah.
Robbie Ray is just a crapshoot. Like he'll have this type of season and it just fall off a cliff.
And
Yeah, they will.
Henry talked about Langoliers. We already talked about that. So that's all the question, guys. So we're just gonna finish up our final thoughts, and we'll start with Zach. Final thoughts on the first half, or whatever you want to talk about, and what are your expectations for the deadline, real quick, and the second half.
I'll start with my expectations for the second half. I really think this team's going to come out, hit the ground running. They have what is going to be a really big and special weekend for this Mets organization. I don't think the players are going to let down everyone involved in it, and they're not going to let down the fans either. They're going to want to come out and see them win some games with the ceremonies going on Saturday for David Wright. And it is against a good Reds team, but the Mets are finally healthy. Starting pitching wise, and seeing what Sean Manaea did in that last game of that Royals series has me really excited to see what he does in the second half. If we can get more of that, the Mets are going to be in a good position at the top half of that rotation. With Manaea, Senga, and Peterson come the stretch, and then if it is Holmes or Montas filling in the back end. I'm fine with that because I think both guys can be serviceable at the very least. So the Mets, I expect them to hit the ground running. I expect the offense to get off to a good start. I expect guys like Vientos and Alvarez to come back up and provide for the bottom of this order. And then I expect David Stearns, I hope, but I also expect him to make the big move that's going to put this offense and this team as a whole over the hump and really just kind of propel them to top of the National League and the MLB in turn. And after this first half, it's put up or shut up time because you can't start the first 60 plus games with 21 over 500 and then kind of just fall back to earth and just kind of limp to the finish line of the first half. You need to do something that's going to really put you apart from these other teams because I think what showed is that the Mets are as good as the Phillies right now. They're as good as the Dodgers right now. They're as good as teams like the Brewers, the Cubs. They're not better than them. They can beat them, but they're not better than them. They need to become better than them, and they can at this deadline with the right moves.
Yeah, Chris.
I think Francisco Alvarez, like you said, Zach, needs to come up ASAP right after this All-Star break and just be on this team because I cannot watch another Luis Torrens at bat. I mean, I could watch him throw out runners all day long, but I can't watch his bat. It's dreadful. It's dreadful. And this bottom of the lineup is already just lacking as it is. So to add that onto it when you have the likes of Francisco Alvarez, hopefully that power potential and just like maybe not listening to what Eric Chavez has to say when he gets back up to the major leagues could pay dividends. And, I think the biggest X factor for this lineup is going to be Mark Vientos moving forward, really. I think all eyes, if Mark Vientos is going to stick around after the trade deadline, if he's not moved, which I think that there's a possibility that he could, right? And he should if the Mets have a trade in place to make this team better and this lineup better. But if he's not, if he's sticking around, this offense is going to absolutely propel if he is able to do something exponentially better than what he was able to do in the first half and get back to that 2024 version of Mark Vientos. Because Brandon Nimmo has figured it out. I think he's figured it out. Jeff McNeil clearly has, come off the IL earlier this year, just hit the ground running. hopefully you'd expect Juan Soto to be as, he's great right now, but better with runners in scoring position at the top of your lineup. And I think everything else consistent. All eyes for me on Mark Vientos. The pitching, really happy to get Manaea back. I mean, he looked electric, so Dakota Senga in that Royals series. But this team is going to have to start scoring earlier and more often because these late game comebacks are great. They're exciting until they're not, until you don't have a late game comeback, right? And then you're just losing a bunch of ball games. So this offense is going to have to figure something out in the second half. And I think there's one other question saying, if this offense doesn't figure it out in the second half and they keep, doing this, is Chavez and Barnes, are they on the chopping block? Yes, absolutely. 100% they are. I don't think David Stearns hesitates to get their asses out of this organization if this lineup doesn't succeed. This team was built on its offense, and they have not been winning games because of their offense by and large part in the first half. They are going to be gone. So all these jokes that Eric Chavez wants to make on his IG stories talking about pancakes and whatever and just trolling Mets fans that are I guess they're trolling him too. But you know what I mean? He just seems like he's not serious. He just wants to play the, everything's all right game. And it's not. It's not. It's time to actually be serious and take the job seriously. I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying that this team is a reflection of their philosophy and what they're saying. So it's not all on the hitting coaches, like you said, Rob. I'm not saying that, but at a certain point, they have to get held accountable. Hitting coaches in this organization have been held accountable in the past many times, and this is no different. So that's it. I'm excited for the second half. I also agree with Zach. I've been saying it since the offseason, Rob, when we were going back and forth all the way back when David Stearns was doing what he was doing, that he's going to make the necessary moves at the deadline, and I still think that. So hopefully he proves me right.
Yeah, as we get started for the second half after the All-Star game is over and the next 2 days off, getting ready for Cincinnati at home. Obviously, it's a big weekend with David Wright's jersey retirement, which is huge. Unfortunately, I can't make it, which sucks, but that's my stupidity for leaving New York. But that's all right. So overall, there should be 2 words every Mets fan going into this deadline should say. No excuses. There's none. For David Stearns, in general, front office, getting what they need in here to make this team better. There is no more excuses for this roster, this lineup, this rotation, this bullpen. The rotation is getting healthy. The lineup needs to step up. There's no excuses for these guys not to be better. The bullpen needs reinforcements, but I think with the starting pitching being healthy, it's only going to help the bullpen be better because I think healthy rotation means that they could go deeper into games, which should help. You should have bullpens not using 5 or 6 guys every night. That should help the bullpen. So no excuses for this organization, front office, or roster. There is no excuses. So anybody make excuses for anybody, you're just wasting your time because this is a World Series contender, and there shouldn't be any excuses for a World Series contender from the top to the bottom of this organization. Overall, guys, this was almost a 2-hour show. So we got into everything, but there's one announcement, and I did not tell Chris or Zach this yet, but a week from now, either next Monday, the 21st, or Tuesday, the 22nd, a week before the deadline, it's going to be the Mets trade deadline show every day, all the time, all types of shows. We're talking about everything Mets at the deadline, the latest rumors, what we're thinking, what's going on. Maybe there's already trades happening. That is exactly, Zach, I'm sorry I'm blocking your face. I wasn't expecting that to do that, but I do apologize for that. But the Mets trade deadline show starting next Monday or Tuesday, the 21st or the 22nd. Obviously, these guys will obviously be on with me almost all the time, hopefully, and others as well. I'm going to try to get some guests on here, maybe a reporter or two before they get extremely busy before the deadline, seeing if we can get any information out of these guys. And hopefully we'll definitely get what we need at the deadline. So the Mets trade deadline show coming up next Monday or Tuesday, and it'll be every day for the final week, the week of the deadline show every single day. And obviously pregame, postgame, we'll be doing that as well. So a ton of videos from I know me and Chris, we just constantly
I need to start.
Kill you guys with videos. So a lot of videos about trade rumors and our thoughts and opinions. a lot of live streams over the next couple of weeks. So you will be sick of our faces, but hey, this is what we do, right? We like to have some fun around here. So Chris, Zach, 2 hours in. It's a great show. We get to enjoy these last couple of days off before we start bitching and moaning about the Mets again, not scoring position.
Hopefully not.
But let's hope going home and playing the Reds. David Wright is back in town for his jersey retirement, and hopefully it gets us going on the right road to where we need to be. 13 games over 500, half a game out of first place. Thank you for tuning in to the Mets Talk Live show on this All-Star Break edition, and we'll see you next time, guys, in a couple of days, and check out for all our trade rumor videos as well. Have a good night, guys, and let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife.